In my last video, I revisited the free will question from a new angle, focused on explaining will instead of the usual back and forth about freedom versus determinism. Will starts with the will to live, present in all organisms, all selves. It's a bias against degenerative work and therefore towards self-regenerative work. It emerges by accident in pre-life chemistry, a tendency towards self-regeneration becoming stronger over evolutionary time, all the way out to us and our robust self-regenerative biases. Our bodies' strong, unconscious, unfelt biases toward the healing work that tries successfully to keep us going and reproducing. And our conscious felt biases too, our evolved and learned ever-changeable habits of interpretation, biases about how to react to our circumstances. Unlike cue balls, selves take cues from their circumstances. So free will, regarded as complete independence from circumstances, doesn't make any more sense than passive determinism. You're always under influence of your changing circumstances. Why then does it feel like we have free will? Two reasons. First, you really do have will. You're a locus of biases, preferences, and habits of interpretation. Second, my focus here, interpretation is indirect and unpredictable, way more unpredictable than cause and effect. Interpretation is not cause and effect. Stop signs will cause you to stop if you crash into them, but that's not why you stop at them. You stop because you're from a culture that interprets them as a value to stop at. You have learned a biased interpretation against running through them. You interpret them as about your circumstances, traffic, the law. You stop variously at them, sometimes a rolling stop, sometimes a complete stop, each stop different. Little differences in how you stop can make a big difference. One can roll through a stop sign and be killed by oncoming traffic. One can come to a complete stop and die rear-ended. With interpretation, there's always a potential for misinterpretation of your changing circumstances. That's true for interpretations made by any and all selves, even those with no feelings, thoughts, or consciousness. All biological adaptations are habits of interpretation that could end up being deadly misinterpretations, given ever-changing circumstances. We've been complete slobs about distinguishing between causes and interpretations, not just in everyday life, but in research. There are many differences. For example, there's never a physical effect without a physical cause. That cue ball won't move without something physical impacting it. Interpretation isn't like that. We often interpret absences. You might interpret no response from a friend by giving up on the friendship. A predator might interpret the absence of prey by moving to different hunting ground. An unfeeling, unconscious tree sheds leaves in response to the absence of sunlight. Saying that these absences cause responses, that no response from your friend, no prey, no sunlight, impacted or caused interpretations, is just sloppy, a loose confusion of caused effects with interpretation of circumstances. Interpretations are will-driven guesses, bets on what biased work to do and not do. Interpretations are open to interpretation in ways that cause and effect phenomena isn't. You could respond to your friend's absence in many ways depending on your values, what you think it's about, and what you want to do. And your interpretation will lead to other reinterpretations. Dropping the friend frees you up to be biased towards something else, another friendship perhaps, that changes your life in unpredictable ways. With cause and effect, there's much more proportionality. Little differences usually make little differences. Big differences usually make big ones. With interpretation, little differences can make huge differences, and huge differences can make little ones. The whole of Christianity was shaped by St. Augustine overhearing a boy next door repeating the words, "Take it and read," which Augustine interpreted as a sign from God. How we interpret our circumstances alters our biases in wiggly ways. Yielding ever-changing biases. And our circumstances aren't just passive deterministic physics either. They include lots of other selves, all interpreting and reinterpreting. We like to talk as though we've seen the writing on the wall, as though it's obvious how to interpret things. It's not. Finally noticing this crucial difference between cause and effect phenomena and means to ends interpretation, we discover a new approach to the free will debate. From their origins, selves have will-driven biases towards some work instead of other work, evolved and learned ever-changeable habits of interpretation. The free will debate focuses on human interpretation. The case I've made here, based on scientist Terry Deacon's approach to the origins of will, is that interpretation emerges at the origins of life. Still, with humans, there is a radical shift in how interpretation happens, a product of our capacity for language. With language, we gain the capacity to interpret in expansive ways. Cause and effect is immediate. Most living interpretation is proximate. For example, food nearby interpreted as of self-regenerative value to eat. Language frees humans to engage in interpretation over huge time and space distances. For example, Christian interpretations today biased by how Augustine interpreted the neighbor boy's repeated utterance. Language ungrounds interpretation. We can talk about dogs when no dog is present. We can talk about the future, the past, the near, the far, the real, the imaginable. Language opens a can of worms, endless possibilities for changing biases, interpretations and misinterpretations, our biased guesses on how to respond to circumstances. Our language competence explains why, among species, we are so uniquely visionary and delusional. It explains why our behavior is unpredictable in ways that we readily misinterpret as anything goes free will, as though we make decisions completely independent of outside influences, doing willy-nilly whatever we want. You can find more about this approach in my new book, Neither Ghost Nor Machine: The Emergence and Nature of Selves. You can watch more videos on this YouTube channel. You can read articles at our website, or you can do a jillion other things you might be willingly biased to do. And you will decide by evolved, learned, unconscious, and conscious biases, cues you take from your ever-changeable interpretation of your ever-changing circumstances. Thanks for watching.